Thank you so much for joining us at the World Dream Day. World Dream Day is augmenting dreamers. We are currently sponsored by the royal family at the UAE, who is consistently investing significant part of their portfolio to not only imbibe change, but also bring out the best in people as they continuously dream, continuously execute, and also continuously to scale, not only in the regions that they are currently into, but also into areas which are new edge. And also with COVID bringing in all of us together, the opportunity to create a one build story. For us, education is a center core of a lot of actions. That's what helps us dreams. That's what helps us connect, and that's what helps us grow. I have three key proponents of the way education is really perceived with Mr. Chopra, who has been consistent in driving the way education is given to people, not only at an Indian level, but at a global level. We have Abhilash, who brings in the new technology of the way education can be scaled and today really being looked at various aspects with acquisitions under his foray, with technologies that are not only limited in India, in languages that are not always English, but in different ecosystems, really bringing out the best so that the market really accepts what it is. And Sandeep, who's been a part of the VLCC growth story, critically also making sure that the education business for VLCC, something that he envisaged very closely and ran for a while to make sure that the people who did not have opportunities really came up, learned a way of life, learned a way of living, coming up not only from the bottom of the pyramid, really bringing up value to themselves and to the society. I'd like to start with Mr. Chopra and really bring that up from you. Where do you think today the way people are looking at education, not only from an Indian customer standpoint, but really from a global standpoint? Because you have been a part of the bridge who has bought education not only from an Indian ecosystem, but from a global ecosystem and really bridged that. What's been your mantra of building an empire of what you have built?
Well, I don't know about the empire bit, Pranav, but pre-COVID, a phrase that I used to use very often, in fact, I've been using it from 1995, 96 on since we started, especially in training of our staff and talking to students, that my job was to look beyond horizon. Nobody could have predicted the COVID story, however it happened. And it has essentially blown all the paradigms that were pre-existing to COVID to smithereens. Now, I mean, in the current scenario where we are still kind of, if not in the middle of it, we are still living with the COVID scenario, waiting for another wave, waiting for things to happen. Education in this time was forced to move to be driven into the online model, which a lot of our university partners were looking at doing and had introduced. There was a lot of online education that had come on stream. Adaptation was more prevalent in the West. In India, the adaptation of online education was not quite that much. In this time, it has gone online, but there is, of course, the whole idea of education being that you need to be with other people, your peers, with your teachers, and be bouncing off. And the multi-dimensional aspect of education is not just the books, or the course content that you read. It's all the gain that you have from studying with other cultures. If you're studying in overseas institutions. Particularly so. Other cultures, if you're studying in India, because Delhi University is full of people from all over India, so you're sort of exposed to people from all over India, and there's a huge gain
Yeah.
in your dimension. So where is it going? I think that in the first phase of moving post-COVID, we'll be looking more and more at the blended model, which is part online, part in class. I think that as we move beyond the COVID story, this will have become quite prevalent. But I do believe that there will be niche institutions and or products where the full contact class will still be the
Sure.
operating.
Understand.
Yeah. So I think
Yeah.
that broadly, I think that's where we are headed.
Sandeep, I want to pick that up, and I think what Mr. Chopra just said, and he used the word gain in a far more purpose-led perspective, which was led to people to benefit not only for getting a job or just getting a degree of sorts. You have consistently built skilling academies and build avenues and cultures within various aspects of education. What has been your purpose when you have built not only one, but many over the years, not only in India, but overseas as well, to empower people? What has been your global education revamp strategy?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Pranav. There are two perspectives that I bring to the table. One is, as my own experience, being involved in the starting up and scaling up of the VLCC chain of institutes within the VLCC group, and the institutes, incidentally, today number 94 across 40 or 67 cities in India. So it's a fairly sort of wide and deep sort of reach that has been established over the years. And the other perspective is that of being part of the industry as vice chairperson of the Beauty and Wellness Sector Skill Council, which has been sort of mandated, if that's the right word to use, by the it's an industry backed and it's a government backed and industry led platform to to develop and scale up the sort of skill development ecosystem across various job profiles, and in this case has to do with beauty and wellness. As somebody who has been involved in this sphere, what I have seen over the years is slowly but steadily overcoming two kinds of challenges. One is the whole challenge of academic education versus skilled education or vocational education amongst as a mindset, and that I have seen over the years being broken down, and more so in the last few years, where it's now kind of acceptable for young people to opt out of an academic career and opt for a vocation-based career, which I think is a fabulous trend. However, the unfortunate part is that opting out from an academic career, choosing a vocational career, is restricted to certain vocations and not across the board. And those vocations would be, for lack of any other word to use, seen as more glamorous. For example, fashion designing. For example, things to do with creative arts. But how many would look at, adopting a career as a nursing attendant, which incidentally, just to let you know, and it's a well-kept secret also, that a nursing attendant job is a fairly handsomely paid job in today's context, by the way, when it comes to, taking care of the elderly and so on and so forth. So these are options that are emerging, and over a period of time, I think that will happen, that people will consciously choose vocational careers in comparison to academic careers. And I look forward to that happening sooner than later. referring to what Mr. Chopra said about, how COVID has impacted this whole space. Indeed, like for rest of industry at large, COVID has impacted this segment structurally as it has other segments. But the challenge of vocational training is that it cannot be dependent on contactless education alone across extended periods and across professions. Take beauty and wellness as a profession. A beautician needs to be hands-on when being trained to do makeup, or being hands-on when doing hairstyling and so on. So what has certainly happened across the industry is that, including VLCC, is the pivoting to a kind of a blended learning approach, where the academic aspect of a particular course is all taught online, and the practical aspect or the lab-related aspect is still conducted at
interesting, yeah,
the at the campus itself. And at the last point, I'd say, just to as a note of hope in the doom and gloom of COVID, is that we've experienced at VLCC that in the worst of times, which was the financial year FY21, where institutes or skill development institutes were closed for a period of 6 months or more as a regulatory requirement. The fall in student signups was only about 22 to 25%, and I speak for a lot of other organizations within this domain, and that gives you an idea about how this whole space is moving, where young people, and we do have a large demographic dividend that everybody speaks about, is now being channelized towards options other than what was the traditional higher education or academic education.
Sure. In fact, that's exactly what, Abhilash, I wanted you to really point and finger on. And it's just fantastic that Mr. Chopra spoke about GAIN and Sandeep really took over from there. The perspective of GAIN, specifically with the agenda of taking it to scale for organizations like NSC, and trying to drive that within obviously the fiscal capabilities, and which they want to drive excellence within people who want to make a choice, and the choice of having different careers at the same time, maybe based on their strengths. When you look at acquisitions of new organizations, and I know you consistently are leading the way to acquire organizations to really sink in the blend model today, what are the key things when you see to build storyline for not only the end customer, who is the student, but also the pivot, who is the parent, or I would use social integration, because acceptance in education or acceptance in the job becomes a part of where the students would like to get associated with. And what is it that you see building future careers really mean to you? And I'm really taking that from a global aspect and not looking at only from an India perspective, because I think that's really a global unicorn that you are building for the world, and not only from an India standpoint.
Thank you, Pranav. I'm so happy to be part of this conversation and listening to Mr. Chopra and Sandeep. So when you look at the education business, especially institution like ours, which has been an integral part of the nation's economy as an exchange for the last 26 years, there are two primary missions that we hold very close to our heart. One mission is bringing new generation of investors to the capital markets, and second is helping them get fair and transparent intermediation and advice. Now, in the BFSI industry, which is our area of expertise, the advisory is provided by employees, and the advice is as good as the standards of the employee. So while we create certifications and courses and programs with universities and higher education institutions, right from school level itself, from K-12 up to higher education, Our primary goal is to instill them this customer motivation, the client orientation, is because eventually if they join the banking and financial services as an employee, their first obligation will be to provide the investor or the client the fair and transparent intermediation or advice. And ethics and governance and standards of fair and transparent advice are very, very important. Of course, the technical and functional skills are. When you look at this kind of business scaling up, India has the largest demographic dividend anywhere in the world. The population which is going to be earning now, people between 16 and 60 years of age, which are going to be entering the what you call the working population. The first thing when somebody starts earning out of college or university is, they start to open a bank account. And the moment the bank account opens, the entire process of financial access or financial inclusion starts. And then the entire chain of, credit cards and home loans and commercial loans and two-wheeler loans and fixed deposits and insurance, everything starts to work around. So when you look at a business like this scaling up, you see where is the disruption coming from. The disruption is coming from technology. And last 18 months have told us that technology is the equalizer, and banking and financial services industry is no exception. So you look at adjacencies. As an institution, as an exchange, what are our key strengths? So we are an exchange, we're a tech platform. We are also a quasi-regulator. We are also risk management, compliance.
Which is a good thing for you.
Yes, corporate governance. So as a frontline regulator, these are the areas where our impact is, and hence we want to work in areas where it is. So when we look at an acquisition, we look at is a business which is well founded, which is EBITDA positive, which has a good founding team, has a product or a solution which has ability to scale, and it fits into the adjacencies where our brand can travel. So the last business that we acquired is India's leading deep tech and future tech education provider at the professional space. And that's an adjacent area from finance to technology and overlapping areas. So if you ask me, I think that is where employment is getting created. The banking ecosystem, financial service ecosystem is changing. And hence this entire movement from finance and inclusion of technology, which can be scalable. And at the geography and the size of the population of the country that we have, first-time users, and even if you don't join a banking or financial services business, even if you look at financial education as a life skill, you have met some of the life goals that you need money for. I think that's where we work on.
Mr. Chopra, I want to pick that up from you. In fact, after really spending years in the education, really being the pioneer to partner with a student, today you have moved into being a technology platform, really from the traditional service partnership to a technology ecosystem. Can you spend a moment or so to tell us what you are doing to make that impact, and what made you realize that the next move has to be the platform ecosystem as a growth paradigm to build legacy?
Well, Pranav, part of it is ambition, I guess. And the ambition was to move beyond the India market in the education space and go global. And because once the internet came along, and cyberspace, it became one continuum where you could be functioning from anywhere to anywhere. In fact, I used to joke with my wife and my staff that I could be sitting on Bondi Beach in Sydney and be running my business from there. So that has become the living reality for all of us. The other thing is that there is there are now a multiplicity of factors that are operating on any or impacting on any line of activity, particularly so education. And I'm not sure that in this forum we can start introducing too many of those. But in the sense of in the sense of why we went that way, also there is a huge need. If you look past the Western country ecosystem and perhaps the somewhat developed areas of other parts of the world, there's a huge poverty of opportunity, poverty of knowledge of what's available. I believe personally, and I see it practically in the eyes of the our kids, the poorest of the poor, bright, sparkling eyes. I don't know how many geniuses are hidden there. If they only got the opportunity, how many more geniuses or Einsteins we might find. There is a social dimension to everything that we've thought of or we've done. And are continuing to do, because as far as student movement is concerned, it is a high income story, or a very bright student with a lot of passion, who goes out there and gets the scholarships and drives the his sort of himself into or herself into that space where the American universities particularly are looking for bright students from across the world, and there are other universities across the world who have opened up their space and are giving scholarships. Beyond that, limited space. If you look at the numbers, 7 billion population. I mean, how many, 5.5 billion would be living in the eco space where there are no opportunities at all. So we felt that we should, as a step one, move into that global space, set up our operations, gradually. As you rightly said, I see ourselves as a brick and mortar assisted by tech, having moved into a tech assisted by brick and mortar model. We would love to have a presence in those kinds of countries, and the surplus funds that we generate to channel them into areas where we can have that social impact that I've thought of, talked of, and campaigned on almost all my life.
Super. No, in fact, Abhilash, I wanted to pick that up from you as well, that while Mr. Chopra often speaks about the fact that there is a leverage of the work that he does, which is built for a certain set of people and creating geniuses out of it as they elongate their strategy over the years to really augment potential scale. Where does NSE at this point of time look at reaching out to inclusion of people which are necessarily not in the traditional scope of work that is augmented to the way we look at work? So if you could tell something about that.
Great question. So if you look at where NSE and NSE Academy are part of this ecosystem is, all of us, I would love to believe 99% of the world population works for financial freedom or financial independence. That's the reason for work. Of course, there are other opportunities, of course, for personal gains and learning and self-realization, also learning happens. But most of the learning happens outcome-based, tangibly for financial freedom and financial independence. The exchange, which is NSE, provides a layer of financial access or financial inclusion. And NSE Academy, being a part of the exchange, provides that first layer of financial learning. So good financial learning leads to better financial decisions from the ecosystem, and then towards eventual financial freedom. For us, as you look, when you ask which are the non-traditional opportunities coming in the marketplace, is the entire focus on, as I said earlier, is customer motivation, frontline jobs in banking, insurance, mutual fund industry, where we need frontline advisors today. And I must tell you, by thousands and lakhs every year, so as to service the customers who are coming to the banking inclusion or banking ecosystem right now. And the need is not only in tier 1 cities, it is in tier 2, tier 3, and tier 4 cities and towns across the country. And this is that population which is now generating some money. Personal wealth is getting created in cities outside big cities. Employment opportunities, entrepreneurship, small and medium business enterprises are creating that entire cycle of wealth creation. And this is the new generation of first of all professionals or business professionals who are now saving and who are looking for advice in investment and insurance planning. That is, I think, a new generation of job opportunities coming up. Second is in technology job supporting financial services organizations. What you see at the front in the BFSI business, there's a large pool of tech experts or experts on the IT side who are enabling this entire process. So at the back, in the mid office and the back office, opportunities are coming there. Third is on risk management, compliance, corporate governance. As banking and financial services institutions become larger, the important need of risk management architectures, compliance, corporate governance standards, so that they are able to be a global standard in terms of respecting and acknowledging customer service and advice. So these are some of the layers. We've seen a lot of opportunities coming for returning professional people who have left their jobs, women especially, who have left their jobs because of family needs and other choices they made in the career to come back and start working. Now it is remote working. They can work from anywhere. So talent access today, because of the pandemic, even organizations are open-minded that professionals, and especially women returning to work and work from any place, there are flexi hours of working available to them. And this has certainly changed the way the industry is looking at. We as an integral part of the employment generation for BFSI and tech industry are finding it a unique opportunity, and we are running on so many mandates. Yeah. There could be more opportunity if there's a process that can be aligned to it.
Yeah. Sandeep, I'm going to pick that up. In fact, I've been thinking about it with VLCC's Institute Business, which is really empowering people consistently in a fairly large ecosystem. And as we learned mutually that it's a blended model, which brings out the best both in the learning as well as ecosystems that generate value. What has been the thought for people like you who are leading not only from the skill development side of it, which is constructed by the state-led commercialization program, and private companies like yourself who are partnering to something like that? What holds back to use the blended model of creating a mothership of content which is world-class and then taking it and replicating across the world with service partner providers? Has that been a thought, or was it experimented? Was that something which worked, that it doesn't work? What's your thoughts around that, especially to build scale?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, Pranav, one is that in the skill development space, for a large number of skills, by the very definition, there has to be a hands-on experiential kind of training. And therefore, having said that, there is still a lot of stuff that digital can do. And so what ideally would work going forward, and everybody is working on that, so is VLCC with its blended learning model, is the whole phygital aspect of training, where there will be there will continue to be an on-ground presence layered by the digital aspect. And I suppose over a period of time, with automation and AI and all the other, abbreviations that we hear today, it will evolve to another level. And maybe there would be a stage where, there are modules online that can help you work on the basis of providing you hands-on training on the basis of, working on automated sort of live models as people or robots or as people that you work on. Those are things that I know some organizations are working on. And that's where it will gravitate to eventually is my read. But I do not, at the same time, say that, everything will move to the online space 100%. Distance, to my mind, the online space is a form of distance learning. And distance learning has been in place for the longest time. And only thing is that there is now a digital aspect to the distance learning, which will evolve and become even more encompassing, for sure.
Yeah, super. I wanted to, yes, Mr. Chopra, you wanted to say something?
I don't want to hijack your agenda, but I mean, there's something that's playing in my head, which
Please go ahead.
Which I'm going to table before you. The entire education system that we know, and when I say we include ourselves in India also, because our education system was destroyed by the British when they came, and Macaulay basically ripped it apart and brought in the Western or British education system here. The entire system has been designed essentially by design or as a natural thing is another discussion, but it's been designed essentially to was designed to cater to the needs of the Industrial Revolution. Yeah. So you had a scenario where turned lateral thinkers, which all children are. All children are, I believe, born lateral thinkers into linear thinkers by slotting them. So you become a chartered accountant, you become a lawyer, you become an engineer, you become a machinist, you become a hairdresser, you become, a fashion designer, etc., etc., etc. That is where every university courses, even now, all the courses that are that are being taught pretty much are essentially designed to churn out people to fit certain roles, certain job roles. Now, the 21st century has effectively destroyed that completely, because the tech that was developing in the background that no one was talking about except far-sighted people like Alvin Toffler, who talked about future shock and things like that. That pace of change has now accelerated to a point where entire professional spaces are being completely decimated. The employment that you talk of today in the market, if you are honest and we are not being politically correct, is masked by partial employment, especially in the West. The gig economy has come in, and they are projecting those as their employment figures. They are not full employment figures. I mean, jobs have gone. So if you look at jobs like chartered accountants, he's under threat. A lawyer is under threat. These are all things that can be done by digitization and artificial intelligence, machine learning, right? I mean, even I am fond of saying that if you think of a doctor, even the doctor's job is under threat. You will soon have a microchip or a nano particle implanted in you, circulating in you, which will be monitoring your bodily functions. And when there's a chemical imbalance, will ping it to some computer somewhere saying that this is something that's going wrong with your system, or this is what you need to do to correct it. Out comes your prescription. Where is the doctor? The surgeon is today talking, robotic surgery is already there. The difference is that right now there are, human beings that are manipulating the robots. The time is not far off when you reveal it into a sterile room, absolutely free of human beings. Nobody in the education space, political space, socio-economic space is talking about these factors which are coming at us, with hypersonic speed.
So I'm going to add to that, Mr. Chopra, and in fact, just interject with the time in mind, and I'm going to summarize the ecosystem of building value, and I think building value for the student today. I think we still are. The good news is that all of us sitting here are discussing about avenues of education next, and I think that itself creates a sense of empathy and also creativity, that what can be done. I like Sandeep's word of blended education, and I would use the word blended not only for the way education is taught, but the way education is thought about. So I think that is a critical ingredient for all of us to really bring in, obviously with people like Abhilash who are leading the way, leveraging the denominator of technology and pushing its way through to make sure that the education system is not only limited to the select few and taking it not only for our country's size and diversity, but also for people across the world. I think the value of making sure that what education stood for, what it meant for someone who's learning and someone who's learned, still keeps on upgrading itself and bringing thought on it. Thank you so much for coming through and sharing your minds. Really, really appreciate your thoughts, and lovely having all of you guys here. Thank you so much, Sandeep, Mr. Chopra, and Abhilash.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.